back, friends. I'm Lexi, and today we're going to be doing a little bit of a different video than we normally do. I will be going into a deep dive of The Uglies, written by Scott Westerfeld. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because the Netflix adaptation is coming out soon, and I want to put this video out for you guys in case you were interested in reading the book and then watching the Netflix adaptation, or if you're just interested in watching the Netflix adaptation and you want to know what is different in the movie than in the book. And I do have here a pointer. This is actually an extra long chopstick, and I hot glue gunned this doohickey thing so that it's more comfortable for me to hold and to point with. Before we get started into the video, I do want to give a trigger warning. If you are someone that struggles with low self-esteem, or if you struggle with an ED, then this video is not for you. The topic of itself is discussing ugly versus pretty people. So if that's something that's going to upset you, then feel free to click away. There are plenty of other videos on my channel that you are more than welcome to watch. I do have some notes here that I typed up to kind of just get my thoughts all together, so we can go ahead and get started. The Uglies, written by Scott Westerfeld, was written and released back in 2005. Now, this is the time of the beginning of the YA craze. We had Twilight, we had The Hunger Games, written and released a couple years after The Uglies, and then we also have Divergent and the selection that came out a few years after this. I think it actually came out maybe like 2010, 2012 there. I will fact check that and put it on the screen for you. But just flash back to 2005, the height of the YA craze was just starting to take off. The Uglies was one of the very first books that was released during this time. And I also do want to note that I feel like this adaptation for The Uglies is coming a little bit too late. It feels like Netflix might have missed the boat. If this was ever going to be adapted, it should probably have been done back in the day when Twilight and The Hunger Games were coming out, because it feels a little bit too late. So let me set the scene for you. We are following our main character, Tally Youngblood. She is about to turn 16 in this town that they live in, which is called Uglyville. Yes, you heard that right, Uglyville. Teenagers who turn 16 are then eligible to get the pretty surgery, and the pretty surgery basically turns you pretty. I don't know what the specifics of waiting until you're 16 is for. Maybe it's because they're waiting until they hit past puberty. We also have Tally's best friend, Paris. Remember this man because he becomes important later on. He is actually a little bit older than Tally, and he's already undergone the pretty surgery. So in the very beginning of the book, Tally travels from Uglyville to New Pretty Town, where all the new pretty people live, because she wants to see Paris. Once you turn pretty, you are required to live into New Pretty Town. And in the society, they have something called New Pretty, so people who have just undergone the surgery. Middle Pretty, so basically you're middle age and you're still pretty. And then Late Pretties, who are at an older age. So Paris lives in New Pretty Town, and he is at this party at this mansion. Tally sneaks into this mansion to see him because they had been BFFs since they were young. When they were both ugly together, Paris made Tally promise that they were going to get the pretty surgery together so that they can be pretty and live a life of popularity. But when Tally sneaks into a mansion where all the new pretties live, Paris is like, you don't belong here. Why don't you go get the surgery and then come back? And then we can be best friends again. Tally is getting the feeling that something has changed within Paris once he's got the pretty surgery, but she can't quite put her finger on it. Also, Paris is like, you gotta sneak out. No one can see you because you are ugly. Also, the other thing, the way that Tally sneaks into this mansion is that she is wearing a pig mask. People are calling her Piggy when they come across her at this party. But anywho, she climbs up to the roof of the party and she bungee jumps off of it, and then she lands. But there are wardens about because they're trying to catch all the ugly people because they don't belong in New Pretty Town. So she decides to just hide out for a little bit because she doesn't want to get caught by the wardens. And when she's hiding, she runs across this woman named Shay. So when they're hiding out together, they both find out that they share the same birthday and that they're going to turn 16 together. And Tally's like, oh my god, yay, we can go get the pretty surgery together. These two quickly become friends, and they take their hoverboards back into the city because it's very much giving back to the future, where they use hoverboards and hover cars to travel around. So these two go back to Uglyville and they become fast friends. One day, they are both hanging out in Tally's bedroom, because when you are still ugly, you kind of live in like a boarding school situation. So they're hanging out in Tally's bedroom. And Tally does this thing where she's basically taking her face and putting it into this program to make it look like what she might look like when she's pretty. And Tally's like, oh my God, it's so much fun to modify what we look like and pretend that we're pretty. And Shay's like, I don't really like face tuning myself, because that's basically what this is. They are face tuning themselves. She's like, I don't really like it. Shay thinks that society is pressuring them to be pretty because when they're in school, they're taught that people who are pretty are more privileged and they get by easier. It's very much giving pretty privilege. They are also taught in school that back in the day before the pretty surgery, society was killing themselves because of the differences in people's appearance. They were killing themselves over their race, ethnicity, backgrounds. And so this society that Tally and Shay live in is basically like, we've eradicated all differences, and so now we are basically look all the same. It's kind of giving racism, but Shay decides to look past Tally's bias that she has grown because they've like grown up in this society. She's like, hey, one day, why don't we go outside of the city limits and take our hoverboards and kind of explore it out there? And Tally's like, yeah, sure, that's fine. I've been outside the city limits because they apparently take a field trip to this place called the Rusty Ruins as a kid. And she's like, yeah, I'll take this field trip with you. Tally seems to think that there's nothing outside the city limits, outside of the Rusty Ruins. She's like, who would want to live there? Nobody lives out there. There's nothing out there. But Shay's like, no, girly, I think there's stuff out there. So they take their hoverboards out there and they have a really fun time on some whitewater rapids, and they run across a roller coaster that they decide that to use that, and it's really a lot of fun for them. And while they're out there on this little adventure together, Shay admits that she knows somebody that lives outside in the wilderness, and his name is David, right here. And Shay's like, I want you to meet David. But Tally's like, I don't believe that David actually exists, because who would want to live out here? Shay lights a flare that's kind of like her signal to David to come and get her, but David does not show up, which convinces Tally like this man is not real. So they both abandon that mission and they go back to the boarding school. And the thing that we learn about this boarding school is that the kids there, obviously they're all ugly, but they play pranks on each other. The other thing about this boarding school is the kids are very mean to each other because they're ugly. They call each other fatties, and they're like, don't you wish you were skinny? They don't like that talk and that rhetoric at all. Tally also tells us that there are only 10 people in the history ever who are born naturally pretty, and it's very rare. And she also tells us that sometimes people who have the pretty surgery, it doesn't work on them, and unfortunately they're just ugly for life. And Shay admits to Tally that she actually doesn't want to have the pretty surgery. She's like, I think society is fooling us into thinking that we're all ugly. And she's like, I actually want to live out in the wilderness and find David and find the people that he lives with, and I don't want to be here anymore. And Tally's like, why would you ever want that? They end up getting into a really, really big fight with each other, and they don't talk for weeks. So one night, Shay shows up into Tally's bedroom and she's like, I'm leaving, I'm getting out of here, because this is the night before, or maybe it's a couple of nights before their 16th birthday. And she's like, I have to leave now because on my 16th birthday, the authorities are gonna come and get me and they're gonna make me get the pretty surgery, and I don't want that. So she's like, I'm leaving. Tally, please come with me. Let's leave together. And Shay admits that she's had some friends in the past that have actually run away from the city and have lived out in this society called the Smoke, so basically out in the wilderness. Because she's like, I don't have any friends here. All my friends are out in this town called the Smokes, and I want to go be with them. And Tally's like, actually, I desperately want to be pretty. So Tally does not go with Shay. Shay does, however, leave her a note with directions on how to find the Smoke, and Tally keeps it, and she's like, I'm probably never going to use this ever. So the following morning, she gets picked up by hover car by the authorities that are going to take her to go to the pretty surgery. Also, I forgot to mention that Shay makes Tally promise that she won't tell anyone about the note or where she's going. She's like, you can't tell anybody, make this promise to me, die and tell on your grave. Do not tell anyone about this note. So Tally's like, sure, I won't tell anybody. So the following morning, the authorities come to pick up Tally because it's her birthday and she's about to get the pretty surgery. And so they take her to this place called Special Circumstances. Yes, you heard that right. It's called Special Circumstances. The way that Scott Westerfeld cannot think of any unique or clever names to these places is actually abhorrent. So when Tally is taken to Special Circumstances, she is immediately handed over to Laverne Cox, who's playing Dr. Cable. And Dr. Cable is a part of Special Circumstances. And she tells Tally, hey, actually, your friend Shay is a part of a gang. And this gang of people who have been trying to like leave and flee the city, they're causing problems for us. She's like, I think you know more than you're telling us, and you know where Shay went. And Tally's like, No ma'am, I actually don't know anything. Dr. Cable says that she's actually been monitoring Shay for a very, very long time, and she wants to catch all the people that have fled the city and are living out in the smokes because they don't know where the smokes is. Otherwise, they would go ahead and do it themselves. She's asking Tally, please help me find Shay and bring all these people back here and bring them to justice because they need to have the pretty surgery. So Tally decides she's not gonna help Dr. Cable. She's like, I actually don't like you, lady, and the way that you have been treating me and your people have been like hauling me around this place. She's like, I actually won't be helping you. And then Dr. Cable was like, fine, don't help me, but what's gonna happen now is that you're not gonna get the pretty surgery and you're gonna be ugly for life because you've decided not to help me. Tally's like, I don't want that. I really, really, really want to be pretty. So they take her back to the dorms and the kids are making fun of her because they're like, oh my god, she's gonna be ugly forever. And she really starts to feel like a pariah at the boarding school because people are starting to question, like, you went to go get the pretty surgery and you came back still ugly. Also, her parents come to visit her. Her dad is Sol and the mom is Ellie, and they're like, why don't you just tell Dr. Cable about Shay, just do it, and then you can go and be pretty. And she's like, no, I made a promise. Kelly's like, I'm not gonna rat out Shay, even though we've only known each other for a couple months. I do also want to note that her parents live in the city called Crumblyville. Yeah, you heard that right, Crumblyville. And while she's commiserating in her dorm room, Paris, this man, I told you he'll be important later, he comes and pays a visit to Tally, and he's like, Tally, just help Dr. Cable. And he definitely kind of peer pressures her. He's like, you actually made a promise to me first. You promised me when we were kids that we were going to get the pretty surgery together and that we were going to be popular together. He's like, my promise overrides Shay's promise. And Tally's like, you know what? That is actually right. So she then sends a message to Dr. Cable and she's like, ma'am, come and get me because I'm about to tell you everything. So Dr. Cable comes and picks up Tally. What we learn about Dr. Cable is that since she works at special circumstances sessions, she's actually considered what is a special. Specials are like one level above the pretties. So Tally then goes and tells Dr. Cable, here's the note that Shay left me. Here you go, lady. I done what I can do for you. Where's my pretty surgery? And Cable's like, not so fast. It looks like this note and the direction to find the smokes was written in code. I'm actually gonna have you go out into the wilderness all by yourself and find Shay. And Tally's like, it'll take me weeks to do that because Shay told me it's gonna take 2 weeks to go out into the smokes and find them. And Cable's like, yeah, sure. Here's a hoverbird, a tricked out hoverbird. Here's 2 weeks of dehydrated food. Here's a sleeping bag. Off on your way. Go find Shay. But before you leave, let me give you this pendant, this necklace pendant that's shaped like a heart. And when you open it, it's gonna read your retinas. And then that will notify us to come and get you. So Tally starts to feel really guilty because she's like, I'm about to be the traitor for this entire secret society out in the wilderness, but I want to be pretty so bad, I don't actually mind. She's actually leaving like 4 or so days after her 16th birthday, and Dr. Cable's like, you gotta set out soon because people are gonna find it suspicious. Dr. Cable promised her, once we find the secret society and arrest everybody, you're gonna get the pretty surgery. So Tally sets out on this journey, and I shit you not, it is 4 chapters of her just like wandering out in the wilderness and evading disaster after disaster by pure dumb luck. Like there's this one moment where she wakes up to a fire surrounding her and then she jumps into a river and she's like, oh my god, I just got so lucky. And then she's wandering into this field of like white flowers and this helicopter is circling above. But Tally's like, I don't know what a helicopter is. She's like, there's this big ass machine in the sky that's circling above. But what we learned, the people that are flying the helicopter are these people called the Rusties. So they are like even a more criminal sort of like living than the people in the smokes. And the Rusty's job is that when they see an ugly person wandering out the woods, they are supposed to pick them up and take them to the smokes, which literally doesn't make any sense because if Dr. Cable really wanted to find all of the people in the smoke, she could literally enlist an ugly person and be like, hey, ugly person, go out into the woods. And the Rusties would automatically find them and take them to smoke. It feels like an essential flaw in the smokes plan. So the Rusties take Tally out into the smokes where she then meets Shay and she meets this man named Croy and then she comes across David and Shay is really excited to see Tally because Shay's like, oh my god, I knew you were gonna come and find me. And when she gets introduced to all the people out there, Tally meets this man that they call the boss. I actually don't have a picture of him up here because he's such a minor person, but the boss is this man that is a bit older and Tally's like, oh my god, look at this man. He's so ugly. His skin is so saggy. He's so fat. She is just disgusted by the way that his skin sags. She's like, oh my god, all the late pretties get a surgery where their skin doesn't sag like that. She is having some very unpleasant thoughts that I don't like. But also this man called the boss, he has these magazines and Tally's just shocked. She's like, stuff on print? What? And Shay and Tally look at these magazines and they start mocking the people that are inside the magazines. They call the people who are pictured in these magazines grotesquely fat. I'm not joking about that. That is the actual words that they use in this book. And then Shay makes a comment. She's like, well, the people that are considered comedians in these magazines, they are fatties. Most of them are. And then Tally takes a look at this one woman in the magazine and she's like, oh, that person, she's so lean. Her bones are sticking out. She automatically comes to the conclusion that this woman who is so lean and so skinny and who has her bones sticking out must have the disease. And Tally tells us that the disease is actually eradicated by the pretty surgery, and by the disease, she's actually referencing anorexia. Tally decides to not open up the pendant right away, even though she's found this is secret society out in the woods. She's like, let me just simmer down here and take a little rest because I've been traveling out in the woods for like 9 days. So when she's trying to rest and relax, David actually sets her to work. He's like, ma'am, this is an society out in the woods and we have to fend for ourselves. We are homesteaders, so you actually need to get off your butt and help us do some work. So Tally then has to do a bunch of manual labor, and she learns that she actually does like doing manual labor. For someone who was so hesitant to find the secret society out in the woods, she immediately does a flip in her brain that switches, and she's like, I actually think I like it out here a lot better than in Uglyville. Also, Tally and David start to develop a bit of a romance. We also have this guy named Croy who's immediately suspicious of Tally because he's like, I don't think I like you. So they start to have their little romance. David immediately trusts her because he's like, you just seem to get it. You just seem to get what it's like to live out here in the woods. Even though Tally is like, it's so dangerous because her brain is like, I actually want to be in the city. And they start hanging out, and this is where David drops kind of a bomb on both Tally and us, the reader. And he says, actually, I was born out in the woods. I don't know what it's like to be in the city. I have never met a pretty person. He tells her that his parents are actual middle pretties that fled the city to live out in the woods. He also tells her that his parents who fled to live out in the woods, these two people, we have Maddie and Ats, they actually reversed their pretty surgery. And Tally's like, she's gobsmacked. She's like, why would you cut yourself up out in the woods? He's like, no, my parents are actually doctors. So now that Tally's met a bunch of people out here in the woods, she's like, I actually feel really bad that I have to betray all these people. Also, Tally loves being the center of attention in this new community, being a new arriver. And she recounts the entire harrowing journey of her having to travel out there in the woods and like being on her own. And this is where Croy here, he becomes very suspicious of her. Because he's like, didn't you say it only took you like 4 years to get here? And she's like, yes. But he's like, that seems kind of sketch. That seems kind of weird. But now that Tally is the center of attention, Shay gets to be a little bit jealous. And Tally's like, oh no, I have to tell her the truth. But Tally's like, no girl, I understand. That pendant that you have around your neck, she's like, it's okay that it's from your lover. I understand that you probably left a note on how to find us to your lover. She's like, I actually forgive you for breaking that promise. Everything's fine. And Tally's like, yeah, sure. That's what happened for sure. 100%. This man, Croy, only becomes more suspicious as the day goes on. Also, because Tally and David have been hanging out a lot, David gifts her with some gloves because they've been like cutting down trees and such. I'm so sorry, my camera died, but now we're back. What was I saying before? So while David is forcing Tally to do some manual labor, he is actually catching the feels, and he gives Tally some gloves that'll help her with chopping down trees. And because they're living this like homesteading lifestyle, anything that they have and they own is very precious and important. It's very much like a reuse, recycle kind of mentality. Nothing goes to waste. So David gives Tally some gloves, and Tally's like, oh my god, yay, thank you, this will help me so much. But she doesn't actually realize that was pretty significant. But Shay does, and Shay gets jealous. So Shay's like, you're stealing my boyfriend. Even though her and David have never actually like done anything together, she in her mind for some reason like, he's my boyfriend. And Tally's like, no, I'll go and explain to him and give back these gloves because I don't have any feelings for him. But she's like, you actually need to tell him who gave you that pendant and let him know that your lover is gonna come and meet you. So Tally goes to talk to David, and she is intending to telling him that she doesn't have any feelings for him. But then while they do talk, David's like, actually, I have feelings for you. And Tally's like, never mind. And this is the point where Tally is like, I don't know how you can have feelings for me because I'm so ugly. And David's like, I don't think you're ugly. And Tally's like, do you think I'm pretty? He's like, yes, I do think you're pretty. And Tally's like, do you think I'm prettier than Shay? He's like, yeah, I do think you're prettier than Shay. But Tally she still at this point really wants to be pretty, and she lets David know this, and she tells David, you know, I don't know if I 100% want to stay here. And David's like, that's fine. If you want to leave, you can leave, but I want you to meet my parents. Which this makes no sense to me, because the people in the Smokes, they allow people who are ugly to leave if they decide that they don't want to live out there, to go back into the city so they can be pretty, which doesn't make any sense, because how are you letting all the ugly people come and know where your society lives and letting them willingly walk out where they could go back to New Pretty Town and tell the authorities and come and get you? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. But it's beside the point. David wants Tally to meet his parents, Maddie and Otts, because David's like, if you're gonna go back to New Pretty Town, you need to meet my parents, because there's something that you gotta know. So we meet Maddie and Otts, and we find out that Maddie and Otts were doctors that were performing the pretty surgery, and they used to what, I shit you not, is named the Pretty Committee. And this is where another bombshell is dropped about these two. So because they were doctors that used to do the pretty surgery, they have learned that the anesthesia that is used on the patients actually cause lesions in their brain. And the lesions in your brain make you so stupid. And they admit that only the pretty people have these lesions on their brain after undergoing the surgery. All the ugly people are completely fine. They do tell Tally that the lesions can be cured by taking a pill, and they were researching this before they were forced to flee, because apparently if you work in certain areas of the government, such as, I'm going to read it out loud, firefighters, wardens, doctors, politicians, and special circumstances, they don't have the lesions because they take the pill, because they need to be able to critically think in those job functions. Whereas if you're just like a pretty and you don't have any job or anything to do, like, you can remain stupid and the government wants you to be stupid. But these two don't have the resources to reproduce the pill. And it's at this point in the book that is also implied that all the ugly people, that they are not actually ugly, so to speak. They're just average looking people like you and me, born out of the womb, grown up with nothing done to their bodies. They're just average, normal looking people. And the pretty people are actually people who've gotten the surgery, are considered pretty because they have like these asymmetrical faces, they have fillers, they have like bone structures that have been shaved away to make it the ideal form of pretty. So what we're actually calling ugly is just normal, average looking people. So once Tally leaves Maddie and Ott's place, David is like, let's kiss. So they do end up kissing, and Tally makes the decision. She's like, I actually do want to stay here. And she takes off the pendant and she chucks it into a fire where it then gets destroyed. And then they all go to sleep, and then they wake up the next day and special circumstances have shown up, and they start rounding up all the people in the Smokes to send them back to the city. But as they're rounding up the people, they are resisting, and Coy's like, oh, Tally's resisting. Tally couldn't have been the traitor. She couldn't have gotten us into this trouble. And then the boss, the guy that I was talking about before, he escapes with those magazines. However, he does admit to Tally, he wouldn't mind going back to the city for some eye work and some dental work. It's like, I actually wouldn't mind that, but I don't want to be pretty. Which is actually kind of weird, because some of the people in the Smokes are like, you know, I would like to see a dentist and a doctor now and again, but I don't endorse the pretty surgery. And while they're both being held up by special circumstances, Shay is like, you stole my boyfriend. I know you kissed him. They are all hauled into special circumstances, but Dr. Cable in particular wants to meet with Tally. And that's where Dr. Cable admits, if you destroy the pendant, that's another way for me to come and get you. So you had like multiple modes to track Tally down, but Tally was just like, oh, didn't know that about the pendant. Of course you didn't. But Dr. Cable, for some reason, wants this pendant back. So she tells Tally, give me the pendant. And Tally's like, I hid it away in the woods. And Dr. Cable's like, go find it. I want it back. I don't understand why she wants this pendant back so desperately, because it doesn't serve her for any reason. So special circumstances takes her back into the woods, but she's able to escape them, and she goes to find David. David is all alone, hiding out. So David is worried about his parents and wondering if they got rounded up, but Tally doesn't know because she's like, I didn't see it. And in her mind, she's like, I'm gonna justify not telling him that I was a traitor by offering to help him find his parents. In her mind, she's like, this is the rationale, and this is how make it up to him. So they actually go back to Ott's and Maddie's house, but they are not there. His parents actually had like a cache of stuff just in case they were ever to get raided one day. And David knows where that is. And David's like, we're going to use that stuff and we're going to go and travel back into the city to find them. And let me remind you at this point, it's a 2-week trek to go back into the city. So they take their hoverboards and start making their way back to the city. And we spend a whole chapter of them just traveling around. And this is when David admits something that I feel like doesn't make a whole ton of sense. He says that the world's natural resource, which is oil that allows them like cars, airplanes, helicopters to function, actually went bad because it was like infected by something, which doesn't make any sense because the Rusties, the one that saved her in that helicopter, they were flying a helicopter. I'm like, how are you flying that if you don't have any oil? So they make it back into the Rusty ruins and they decide to come up with a plan, a vague plan or a concept of a plan, if you will, in order to rescue everybody. So they start spreading rumors about the city that, you know, like the Rusty Ruins is pretty cool. Everyone should go hang out there, so that a lot of the kids will be taking hoverboards to go out there and like have a fun time, like all the ugly people, because Special Circumstances are looking for 2 people on hoverboards. So they figure if they get a bunch of kids to like ride hoverboards and be out late at night and go into the Rusty Ruins, they probably won't get caught. So they sneak into Special Circumstances and they start sneaking around to try to find the rest of the team. The building is very much structured like a hospital, and they manage to come across Dr. Cable, and Dr. Cable is with Shay, and we find out that Shay has undergone the pretty surgery, and because the lesion on her brain is making her stupid, she is like beyond able to function. They go ahead and knock out Dr. Cable, but they steal her iPad, and they're like, we gotta take Shay with us. We gotta go back and take Shay. And then they find the rest of the team, and they rescue David and Maddie. And they're like, okay, let's get out of here. And they take Dr. Cable's like iPad, her tablet that she'd been carrying out. They also take Dr. Cable because they need her retinas in order to escape the building. So once they make it out of Special Circumstances and back to the Rusty Ruin, Maddie does say that she thinks she can use the tablet to find a cure. Maddie and David decide to stay in the Rusty Ruins overnight, but she does tell Tally and Shay to go and stay someplace else. She's like, I just need us to be separated for a little bit so I can figure out this whole tablet cure thing. They also somehow manage to spread a rumor within Uglyville about what the pretty surgery actually does to you, so that no one else goes ahead and get the pretty surgery, so they don't get the lesions on their brains. And so the following day when they all meet up again, Maddie's like, here, I've got these pills that I think might work, which also something that doesn't make any sense, because I'm like, girl, how did you get these pills? How did you manufacture them? Where did you get the ingredients? Didn't you just complain a couple of chapters back that you couldn't manufacture them out in the woods? It's just very confusing to me. Unless I missed something. If I did, you guys please let me know. So then Tally's like, yay, we got these pills. Let's give it to Shay. Let's cure her. Let's make her not stupid anymore. But Maddie's like, I am a doctor. I took a pledge to do no harm. I will not giving an unwilling patient these pills, because I actually don't know if these are going to work. This is just like test highly suspicious pills. And Tally's like, girl, get off your high horse, just give it to Shay. But Maddie's like, I actually won't be doing that. And that is when Tally realizes that Maddie has figured out the truth, that she is the traitor. And this is when Tally decides to come clean, and she tells David that she is the traitor. She is the one that got all y'all caught. And David's like, it's fine, because Maddie's pissed, because what we learn is that they took Otts into the back and they killed him when they were at Special Circumstances. So Maddie really blames Tally for the death of her husband, but David's like, it's fine, we're all good. So Tally, with her guilty conscience, is like, I need to make it up to David. His dad is dead. We all got captured. I need to make it up to him. So she's like, I will willingly go back into the city and turn myself into Special Circumstances and tell them to make me pretty. And then once I'm pretty, I will come back out here, and then Maddie, you can give me the pill to make sure that it works. But Maddie's like, how are you going to do that? Once you have the lesions on your brain, it's going to make you stupid. So she's like, if you give me permission, if you write it down and sign your name on it, then that is your way of giving consent to take these pills. And Tally's like, I don't know how to write. Because they grow up in a society where there's like tablets and there's computers. She's like, I actually never learned how to handwrite. So Maddie's like, just dictate it. Say it out loud. Then once you come back, we'll all be good. I'll give you the pills. But then David is worried. I mean, everybody else is worried, because it's like, how is she gonna come back here? She's gonna be too stupid to figure it out. So that is a plot hole that is just kind of like left hanging there, which I'm sure is probably going to be resolved into the second book. But we end with Tally walking back into the city and letting herself get captured by the authorities. She's like, I'm here, make me pretty. So in the end, Tally does get what she wants. She wants to be pretty, so she does get that. And that is where the book ends. If you guys haven't already figured it out. I did not like this book. I gave it 1 star. As I mentioned earlier, I do not know why Netflix would adapt this because it really does feel like it missed the boat for YA adaptations. I'm also very confused as to why Scott Westerfeld decided to use Pretty versus Ugly as a vehicle for a YA dystopian novel, because I feel like you could have done that and given the plot a little bit more nuance if you used a different vehicle. But I'm not here to discuss the book further than like the plot synopsis that I gave you. If you want me to react to the Netflix adaptation, I can go ahead and do that. Just leave a comment below. Also, if you like this video, please like, please subscribe. I've been standing here for far too long. I probably have burnt the food that is in the oven. My dog needs to go out and use the bathroom. I'm actually kind of starving right now. So this is where I will leave you guys. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye.